The following is a CTV News special presentation honoring their service and their sacrifice. We will remember them.
Lead us here today. A really warm welcome from
Hello,
the Hangar
and
Flight
thank you for
Museum
joining us for CTV's special presentation of this 2025 Remembrance Day service. We are live at the Hangar Flight Museum in Northeast Calgary this morning, and very shortly we will bring you the service, which is of course steeped in tradition and emotion. Good morning. I'm Tara Nelson. Thank you for being with us. Joining me for the service today from the University of Calgary Centre for Military, Security and Strategic Studies is Rob Hubert. Rob, thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure, Tara.
Outside, of course, nearly 1,000 people have gathered here for this service today. This is an incredible venue, to honor our military at the Hangar Flight Museum, which is now 50 years old, and a lot has been happening here in the last year. In February, the museum celebrated National Aviation Day, which marked the 116th anniversary of powered flight in Canada. On the anniversary of D-Day in June, the museum held a special viewing event for its Avro Lancaster. $1 million reno project was completed with funding help from all 3 levels of government. There are improved walkways, a mezzanine extension and a full loading dock. And work continues on an expansion project to replace the museum's tent hangar. 50,000 people visited the museum last year, and close to 13,000 students took part in education programs. That sets a new record. Today's service is happening just outside the museum on the tarmac belonging to its neighbours, Eagle Copters and Alpine Helicopters. And the site was once the parade square during the Second World War as part of the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan. And while the service goes on outside, we are of course following it from inside the Hangar Flight Museum. This is an amazing place to learn about Western Canada's aviation history. There are many aircraft and displays. The museum itself is located in a former drill hall that was also part of the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan. The ceremony outside is just getting underway. Let's listen in.
Please be seated. I would like to welcome now to the podium Dalwinder Gill, Member of Parliament, Calgary and McKnight, who will give remarks on behalf of the Government of Canada.
Good morning. Thank you for joining me here on this day of remembrance. My name is Dalwinder Gill, and I am the Member of Parliament for Calgary McKnight. I want to take a moment to thank the Hangar Flight Museum for hosting this Remembrance Day ceremony. I understand that the Hangar Flight Museum is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, which is an amazing milestone. I want to congratulate the museum's founders, directors, staff, and community partners. Thank you for the work that you do in preserving Canada's aviation heritage. Since we are on the airport grounds today, I thought that it would be fitting to tell a story about an Air Force pilot from the Second World War by the name of William McKnight. Now, if you are wondering whether William McKnight is connected to the road we drove on to get here today, you would be absolutely right. McKnight Boulevard is named in honor of William Ladstone McKnight. Born in 1918, William McKnight attended Crescent Heights High School and dreamed of one day becoming a doctor. Willie, as his peers called him, was known to be a high academic achiever, but also a dynamic personality. After graduating from high school, he achieved his goal of receiving admission to medical school at the University of Alberta, where he would study medicine before commissioned as a pilot officer in the Royal Air Force in 1939. After only 1 year of pilot training, McKnight proved himself as a standout fighter during the 1940 evacuation of France, shooting down 10 enemy aircraft in just 9 days over the beaches of Dunkirk. McKnight was admitted into the hospital after Dunkirk because he was overexhausted and underweight. A few months later, when duty called again, McKnight didn't hesitate. In the summer of 1940, as the Royal Air Force fought to protect London, he became Canada's top pilot, earning the title of Triple Ace in the Battle of Britain. In August 1940, McKnight was offered the chance to return home and serve as a flight instructor far from the dangers of battle, but he insisted on staying until the end. On January 12, 1941, during a mission with his partner across the English Channel, William McKnight's plane was intercepted by enemy fire and gunned down over northern France. His body was never recovered. He was only 22 years old. Today, we honor those like William McKnight who gave everything for Canada. We pay our respect to the brave men and women who wore the uniform with pride and stood in defense of our great nation. And we take a pause to remember those who never returned home. Lest we forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Dalwinder. I would like to now bring to the podium Miles McDougall, Member of Legislative Assembly, Calgary-Fish Creek, and Minister of Advanced Education.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us as we gather to honor the men and women who have served and continue to serve our country with courage, dedication, and selflessness. Every year on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, Canadians pause together in solemn reflection. We remember those who left their homes and families behind to defend our freedom and our way of life, many of whom made the ultimate sacrifice so that we may live in peace. From the trenches of Vimy Ridge and the beaches of Normandy to the mountains of Afghanistan and countless peacekeeping missions around the world, Canadians have bravely risked their lives in defense of liberty and democracy. Their legacy lives on in the freedoms we enjoy as Canadians, freedoms we too often take for granted. Alberta's contribution to the First World War was profound. Thousands of Albertans enlisted in the Canadian Expeditionary Force, serving with distinction in pivotal battles such as Ypres, the Somme, Passchendaele. Their courage and sacrifice helped shape Canada's emerging identity on the world stage and laid the foundation for our enduring commitment to peace and freedom. Here in Alberta, and especially in Calgary, that legacy is deeply rooted. During the Second World War, thousands of Albertans answered the call to serve. Calgary was home to Kerry Barracks, a key training facility that prepared soldiers for combat overseas. Many of those young men and women went on to serve with distinction in Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific. Alberta also played a vital role in the air war. Our province was a cornerstone of the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, one of the largest aviation training programs in history. Airfields and schools were established across Alberta, including RCAF stations in Penhold, Claresholm, Vulcan, and Edmonton. Calgary hosts the No. 3 Service Flying Training School at Lincoln Park and the No. 2 Wireless School, training air crew in communication and radar operations. One of Alberta's most distinguished airmen was Sergeant Fred Sutherland of Peace River, who flew with the legendary number 67 Squadron in the famous Dam Busters raid in 1943. His courage and skill remain a proud chapter of our province's military heritage. In more recent years, Alberta's contribution has continued with honour. Our province saw many of its sons and daughters deployed to Afghanistan, where they served with bravery and professionalism. Calgary-based units, including the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, played a vital role in combat operations and humanitarian support. The Royal Canadian Air Force, including personnel from CFB Cold Lake, provided essential support, from reconnaissance and transport to medical evacuation, ensuring the safety and effectiveness of our forces on the ground. We also recognize the families and loved ones who carry their own quiet burdens at home, waiting, worrying, and praying for those who protect us. Their sacrifice is part of Canada's story of courage. And today, as Canadians bow our heads in remembrance, may we all renew our commitment to caring for those who have worn the uniform and for those who still bear the wounds, seen and unseen, of their service. We must always honor our veterans, not only with our words, but through our actions, our compassion, and our shared resolve to preserve the peace they fought to protect. As we lay our wreaths and observe our moment of silence, may we remember that freedom has never been free. Our freedom is earned by Canadians whose bravery continues to inspire us all, lest we forget.
Thank you, Miles. Please welcome now a great friend of the museum, Raj Dhaliwal, our Ward 5 councillor, who will give remarks on behalf of the City of Calgary.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everyone. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territories of Treaty 7 nations, which include the Blackfoot Confederacy, consisting of the Siksika, Kenai, and Piikani nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina Nation and the Stoney Nakoda nations. Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3, and we are grateful to live, work, and remember together on this land. And this is my 5th ceremony, and every time I come here, it reminds me how grateful and fortunate that we are living in the greatest city, in the greatest province, in the greatest country of the world. And this was all possible because of the ultimate sacrifices that were made starting back in 1914, First World War, all the way till today. Our soldiers, our peacekeepers, our police officers, our military personnel, every day they are serving us with pride. Today on Remembrance Day, we stand in reflection and gratitude. We pause to honor those who served, those who continue to serve, and those who never returned home. When we wear the poppy, we carry a symbol of courage, sacrifice, and hope. It reminds us that the peace and freedom we enjoy were not given. They were earned. They were earned through the service and sacrifice of generations of Canadians. They were farmers, they were factory workers, teachers, and tradespeople. Many were barely adults. We just heard the story about a great gentleman, McKnight. Those were young souls, people who were fighting for the freedom and liberties we enjoy today. And they came from every province, every background, and every faith. Yet they stood shoulder to shoulder, united by something larger than themselves, a belief in fairness, in dignity, and in the hope of a better world for all of us. Here in Calgary, and especially across Ward 5 communities, that message resonates deeply. Many of our families know what it means to live through conflict or flee from instability. Canada gave us safety, belonging, and peace, values protected by those who served under one flag. Their courage made it possible for all of us to build new lives here. Remembrance Day is not about looking back. It is also about moving forward. It is about teaching our children why we wear the poppy, why silence matters, and why we must never take peace for granted. We also honor those who continue to serve in the Canadian Armed Forces as peacekeepers and here at home as police officers, firefighters, and first responders. Their service carries the same spirit of selflessness, and duty. As we stand together this morning, let us remember that remembrance is not just about gratitude. It is also about responsibility. It calls on each of us to uphold the values our veterans fought for, such as compassion, justice, and unity. In a time when our world can feel divided, the act of remembering binds us together. It reminds us that we are one community, one Canada, with a shared responsibility to keep building a peaceful and caring nation. To all those who have served and all those who continue to serve, we thank you. We thank you a lot, and we honor you. We remember you, lest we forget.
Thank you, Raj. Now I would like to invite our Padre, Lloyd Northcott, Canadian Forces. Lloyd had a career as an infantry officer with the Van Doos before seeking ordination in the Anglican Church and becoming a chaplain in the Canadian Forces Reserve, where he took a call out with the Air Force. He holds a master's degree, a lifelong interest in history, and he is wife of 60 years. Grace are active in their church and a number of veterans organizations.
One sunny Sunday at the military museums, the Air Cadets parade for their annual Battle of Britain ceremony. A veteran speaks. The cadets march past to the tunes of their excellent band. The Padre blesses them. It's been going on for years. Why do they still remember the Battle of Britain after all these years? The Battle of Britain was a proud victory, and Canada was there. It was fought Air Force to Air Force, like medieval knights contesting a field of honor. It still inspires the imagination, and it was a victory for our side. 2 Canadian fighter squadrons participated, so Canada had some skin in the game. 23 Canadian fighter pilots were killed in the battle. We remember them and the 10,000 other aircrew who were killed in the Second World War. Airmen on both sides were injured when their planes were shot down. The German ones were sent to POW camps in Scotland, where some of them were tended by British medical staff. I knew one physiotherapist who tended these German prisoners. She was British, but she spoke German because her mother was German. I asked her what it was like caring for these Luftwaffe men. All she could say was, "They were so handsome." After the war, the RAF paid for the reconstruction of a church in London destroyed by the Blitz, St. Clement's Dane. It has no seats, as the RAF likes to march in and stand easy. On the floor are embedded in brass the crests of the squadrons which fought the war, including the Canadian ones. Outside the doors stands a statue of Hugh Dowding, who commanded Fighter Command. He seems to greet them as they enter the RAF chapel. It was not only servicemen and women who gave their lives. Civilians died too. In the Blitz in London, England, some 30,000 civilians were killed when their homes and places of work were bombed. After the war, a monument to their sacrifice was placed outside the Cathedral Church of St. Paul, which, miraculously, had survived the Blitz. Everything around it was destroyed. The monument, which stands in a lovely garden just outside the church, is inscribed, "Remember before God the people of London, 1939-1945. It is a low pedestal with a further inscription on the top, using words once spoken by Winston Churchill. It reads, "In war, resolution. In defeat, defiance. In victory, magnanimity. In peace, goodwill." Now, that is the moral high ground. The teacher taught his disciples to love their enemies and to do good to those that hate them. This is not the counsels of perfection, but rather practical advice. Hatred consumes the hater. Love heals. As we know, the enemy of yesteryear is the close ally and trading partner of today. One day, Canada will again contest the field of honor with a foe. Will you fight like a knight on the moral high ground for honor and with honor? We trust that you will, and may God be with you. Amen.
Thank you, Padre Lloyd, for those inspiring words. I invite everyone now to stand. I invite Stan Schwartz, Honorary Colonel, Royal Canadian Air Force, to read in Flanders Fields.
In Flanders Field, by John McKay. Great. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that marked our place, and in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us to die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields.
Thank you, Honorary Colonel Stan Schwartz. At this time, I'd like to bring to the podium remain standing. Kay Price, the Chief Executive Officer for Immigrant Services Calgary, to read the Act of Remembrance.
Just checking.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we shall remember them.
It is now the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Please remain standing. Please remain standing. Please be seated. At this time, I'd like to invite longtime friend, personal friend, great friend of the Hangar Flight Museum, Honorary Colonel Emeritus John E. Melbourne, CD, Royal Canadian Air Force, to read High Flight.
Oh, I have slipped this early bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things you have not dreamed of. Wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up the long delirious burning blue, I've topped the wind-swept heights with easy grace where never lark or eagle flew. And while lifting with silent lifting mind I've trod the high untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God.
Thank you, Honorary Colonel, for reading High Flight. On our program now, we have our guest speaker, Stan Swartz, Honorary Colonel, Royal Canadian Air Force.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning. Military veterans, military servicemen and women, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to each and every one of you in attendance this morning in support of Remembrance Day. My 70 years of being associated with sports, athletics, and the military have afforded me the opportunity to experience a thankful and fulfilling life journey. Although there are many rewards associated with sports, athletics, and the military, the most memorable are the many people that I have met and the experience and memories that we shared as part of a team. Everyone has someone who's made an impression. Heroes are often described as people admired for courage, fortitude, prowess, or nobility. They are applauded for their exploits. Today's attitude seems to be that heroes come and go, with so many choices for personal heroes, and the fact that the media captures either too much or too little of them, change from one hero to another, is likely to occur. People associate themselves with heroes because of good looks, wealth, image, accomplishments, and the need for psychological support, movers and shakers. The symbols that people have in their lives, and people have made the ultimate sacrifice. Heroes come from all nations, all races, all cultures, all societies. They are everywhere. Regardless of what people tell you, everyone has someone who has made an impression on them along the road of life. I have been involved in the sports fraternity for most of my life, and I certainly appreciate the athletic prowess of a Bo Levi Mitchell, Jerome McGinley, Brett the Hitman Hart, Mark Tewksbury, and others. However, my heroes come from other walks of life. The everyday humanitarian who works in obscurity deserves hero status, society's protectors, military, policemen, and firemen. I've always had a complete appreciation for sacrifices made by the military personnel in peace and in war. They stand on guard for thee. My memories related to the Royal Canadian Air Force began with my Uncle Stanley Johannes Jorgensen and continue with my good friends Tony Anselmo and Honorary Colonel John Melbourne. I was named after my Uncle Stanley. He was my first real-life hero. He served in the RCAF in the European Theatre. On 16 April 1943, my Uncle Stanley departed from Royal Air Force Lemming, flying the Halifax JB 854 bomber of the RCAF Goose Squadron. The mission was a bombing raid over the Skoda armament factory in Pilsen, Czechoslovakia. He was part of a formation of 327 Lancaster and Halifax bombers. The Skoda factory is not hit because a mistake was made marking the target. The raid was a complete failure, compounded by the bright moonlight, making the aircraft easy targets for the German night fighters. In all, 36 aircraft and their courageous crews were lost. 408 Goose Squadron lost 4 aircraft and 28 young airmen. As a result of the Pilsen, Czechoslovakia operation, there were 52 prisoners of war, 13 evaders, and 199 crew members killed in action. It is believed that my uncle's plane was shot down in northeastern France by German Ju-88 M110 night fighter flown by Lieutenant Frederick Dobler. All aboard were killed. Stanley and his mates are buried in Loupy-le-Château Communal Cemetery, Meuse, France. Prior to my school years, I wore one of his leather flight caps around the farm. It was given to me by my grandmother. In 1976, I met my mentor, friend, and member of the Canadian football fame, the late Tony Anselmo. Tony enlisted in the RCAF in 1940 and served as a flight lieutenant in the Middle East, Italy, and Israel with the Royal Air Force. He often shared his Air Force experience. Tony and his air crew flew the B-24 Liberator, a heavy bomber, over 40 missions. Following service in Italy, Tony and his squadron were assigned to Malta. One of their missions was a supply run to the Ukraine in order to provide small armaments and medical aid for the Russian army. Supposedly, all prior arrangements had been made with the Russian military to fly under the protection of the Russian Air Force. On the day that they were to begin their mission, 12 aircraft were positioned for takeoff. On the runway prior to takeoff, Tony's plane encountered mechanical problems. The crew was forced to abandon their mission. The remaining 11 aircraft flew and dropped the supplies as planned. However, on the return from Ukraine, the Russian Air Force shot down 8 of the 11 aircraft. How fortunate for all of us on that one day Tony's plane wasn't able to fly. An interesting aside, a year before his passing, Tony and his grandson visited the Nanton Air Museum. At 92 years of age, Tony sat at the Morse code keyboard and recalled the entire alphabet. It often said there's a high correlation between participation in sports, the military, and success in life. They both teach respect, responsibility, and discipline. People involved in the military are committed to be the best. B, for believing in what they're doing. E, for demonstrating enthusiasm. S, for making sacrifices for the benefit of their country. T, for building a trust relationship with their teammates. I share with you an illustration of trust. Many of you have heard of the analogy of holding up a piece of rope and asking someone to grab and hold tight on the bottom end while asking the question, if you were hanging by the rope in order to avoid a fall that could result in serious injury or death, who would you want holding the other end of the rope? I want to read an experience told to me by Jim Barker, long-standing executive in the Canadian Football League. He was addressing a graduating class at one of Calgary's private schools. One of the graduating students volunteered to participate in the rope exercise. She stated that she would want her brother to be the one holding the other end of the rope because he told her that he would protect her forever. You could hear a pin drop among the assembly. Some people were even sobbing. Jim was concerned that he may have said something to offend the gathering. Jim was later informed why the room went silent. The student exhibited an amazing degree of trust considering that her brother in the United States Army had been killed in Iraq only 10 days earlier. Even in death, she trusts that her brother's strength would guide and protect her. If one takes to heart belief, enthusiasm, sacrifice, and trust to bring out the best in every one of us. I'm thankful for the opportunity to be an active member of the South Alberta Light Horse Training Program, a federal government program introduced in 1959. It was intended to provide recruits for the militia and the regular forces. The evidence supporting participating in military for young men is overwhelming. We were introduced to basic military training that included developing a military state of mind and behavior. The training taught the skills and knowledge necessary to succeed in a military environment. Trained to drive a Sherman tank and discharge the tank's weapon system, including a 76mm gun, provided a lasting memory. Being a farm boy and having experience in operating tractors and trucks, I had an advantage over many when it came to driving the Sherman tank, the M35 series 2.5-ton 6x6 cargo truck, the famous Deuce and a Half, and other military vehicles. In addition, we were trained in the operation of various military radio systems and handheld infantry weapons. During my service in the Young Soldiers Training Program, I'll always remember our deployment at Canadian Forces Base Wainwright. And Platoon Sergeant Dignam speaking of courage, camaraderie, and friendship. His message was simple. When one is faced with overwhelming odds, who do you want in the foxhole with you? We all have acquaintances. However, there are a few people that leave no doubt in one's mind as who they really are and what they stand for. I, like everyone in attendance this morning, wants to be associated with those special people that we would be proud to share the same foxhole with. Serving as an honorary colonel of the Royal Canadian Air Force 409 Tactical Fighter Squadron, Nighthawks, I experienced the RCAF 409 fellowship and commitment to excellence, along with their significant contribution and dedication to the Canadian military, ensuring that we all can carry the freedom of being Canadian. The military trip to Kuwait and Lithuania was a fitted schedule that provided me a total and absolute appreciation for the Canadian forces in the incredible work done by the RCAF and theatre. Unfortunately, many Canadians remember or review Remembrance Day as just another holiday and gathering with family and neighbours. But Remembrance Day is so much more than that. It is a day to remember and honour those Canadians who did not come back from our wars. It is a day when we all should pause, observe a moment of silence, and reflect on the sacrifices that so many soldiers, sailors, and airmen made to defend our freedom and way of life. More important, let's not forget Canada's war dead. Indeed, included approximately 60,000 World War I, 42,000 in World War II, 516 in the Korean War, and over 158 Canadians in the war in Afghanistan. The total number of Canadians who died serving their country since Confederation is over 118,000. Honoring those who have died in service to our nation is always difficult. Words will never approach the enormous heights of sacrifice of the following. Quote, those citizen soldiers who love freedom beyond measure have tilled democracy's soil with their bodies, blessed it with their blood, being our ramparts against the forces of fear and tyranny. Remembrance Day is a sacred day for Canadians. It is dedicated to all those who gave their lives, securing our freedom and then defending it. In the century since, all of those unalienable rights we cherish still today, that brave young men and women still volunteer to defend Canada. So we pause with great pride and deep gratitude for their courage, for their immense sacrifices on the altar of freedom. Thanks to them, our Canadian way of life sparks the hopes and dreams of others in every corner of the world. What our country represents has drawn millions to our shores. People from around the world who immigrated here became Canadians, built and strengthened this nation, and made their own sacrifices in succeeding generations. And whenever our nation has faced the imminent storm clouds of war, those patriots from all backgrounds, lineage, and faiths have stepped forward to say, I will serve, I will go, I will fight for what is right. We are here today free only because of what they gave on our behalf. To everyone who has remembered a loved one, we all wish you comfort, strength, and peace of mind. Let's not forget the many lives that ended far too soon for the noble causes of freedom, justice, and peace that we enjoy living in the best country in the world, Canada, true north, strong, and free. In closing, I thank each and every one of you for your attendance here today, for providing your time and commitment in supporting Remembrance Day and Canadian Armed Forces for standing on guard for Canadians in order to keep our land glorious and free. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorary Colonel Stan. Next in the program, I would like to ask all dignitaries acknowledging the wreaths to proceed to the back middle area, and I will call upon each of you to acknowledge your wreath.
Well, as we watch the laying of the wreaths this morning, let's bring back our guest, Rob Hubert from the University of Calgary. Rob, thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure.
Remembrance Day is such an important opportunity for all of us as Canadians to let veterans know that their service will never be forgotten.
One of the critical points we do tend to forget is that we have had enemies. We have had men and women who have had to be willing and have actually paid the supreme sacrifice in defending the Canadian state, our freedoms, who we are. And it's something that isn't just sort of a discretionary. It is something that has to be at the heart and soul of our nation.
2025 was a significant anniversary, the 80th anniversary of VE Day, Victory in Europe, and of course Canada played a major role amongst Allied forces. How would you describe our role?
Well, first and foremost, the fact that we as a relatively young and small country were able to be so active in so many of the fronts. We were there in Italy, we were there on the fronts of D-Day, we were there over the skies of Europe. But the other part is the manner in which the entire nation was able to mobilize. We became, as you mentioned at the beginning, we were providing the training, we were providing the raw resources. We were the backbone for much of what was keeping Britain actually in the battle during the Battle of Britain, when Britain was one of the few countries still standing up to the Germans at that point in time. And so Canada has always played a critical role.
When we're talking about VE Day this year, certainly there were some really beautiful services that happened. Of course, Canadian soldiers helped liberate the Netherlands from German soldiers in the spring of '45, and I'm sure a lot of Canadians saw a delegation of about 20 veterans returning to the country they helped free 80 years ago in May. It was a beautiful service, and there are so many places in Europe where Canadians are really celebrated today.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the paradoxes of Canada, is that if you talk to most Canadians and say that the Netherlands have this real sense of gratitude to Canada, they go, huh? Why? Why would, for example, in Ottawa, why are there all the tulips that are planted there? And this is a reflection of the fact that we saved them from tyranny. We were the ones that were able to remove the Germans and the Gestapo and all of the ways in which Dutch society was being so horrifically attacked. It was Canadians, and it was Canadians that were dying and were willing to die in the name of freedom. And it was a very real thing for the Dutch.
By the end of the Second World War, Canada's military had grown, of course, exponentially, but we really can't say that is still the case. That's no longer the case. It was just a few weeks ago that the Auditor General's report said that the Canadian military is still failing in a number of ways, too significantly, recruitment and housing. So let's talk about recruitment first. We're still 14,000 members short in the Canadian military. I saw a stat that only 1 in 13 candidates actually make it to basic training. What is happening?
Our political elites aren't paying attention. I mean, I see the numbers, I talk to young Canadians that want to join. It isn't because of a lack of a willingness to want to come and be part of the Canadian military in the 2025. But what has happened is that basically our political elites have said that it's not necessary. We're not going to give you the funding that is necessary. And because we have starved the forces so much in the last 15, 20 years, we don't even have that capacity when, in fact, that we get the young people coming to the doorstep saying, we want to join. They're so busy just trying to keep minimal capabilities going that when it comes, okay, now you got to take the time off and train these individuals properly, we don't have that capability. And this is what we're struggling to try to regain right now.
And how do you make it attractive for them when the other big problem is housing? Housing on the bases are desperately run down. How could you attract people and then put them in such poor quarters?
Well, the irony is, and you almost have to stand that question on its head, how come so many people still want to come in spite of that? And again, I think that the Canadian government bear a responsibility. They take advantage of the Canadian forces and saying, you know what, we really don't have to bring you out of the 1950 level of the accommodations that we have. And I've seen some of them, and they are indeed atrocious. As a rich country, I find it unforgivable that we would not be trying to provide the best accommodations for these individuals that are in fact willing to put their lives on the line.
Major investment is coming, according to the Liberal government, and the new budget includes $81 billion over 5 years in defense spending. But the criticism is that it's very short on details and exactly how that money will be spent. What did you see in the budget? What stood out to you?
I've learned not to look at the budget. I think back to 2017 when the Canadian government, the preceding Liberal government, said, you know, it's got a defense budget, it is going to be done completely different, it's fully costed. And then we did nothing. Successive Canadian governments have demonstrated that they can talk the talk, and then they very quietly forget about actually following through. If I actually see efforts going forward, addressing the infrastructure that our forces need to have, and the kit that is so necessary, the submarines, the fighter aircraft, the new type of equipment that our Army needs, if I actually see the government making those decisions, then I'll say, okay, this is more than political talk, but we have been stung so badly in the last 15 to 20 years that I think that most Canadians that watch this are very cynical in terms of anything that is stated in the budget.
We need 12 new submarines, and there was no actual money specifically earmarked for that in the budget.
The worst thing is we know we've needed those submarines since the 2000s. We've seen what our enemies are doing. We've seen the capabilities that both the Russians and Chinese have been developing in terms of their underwater capability, the type of torpedoes they're introducing that literally can now, by the way, be fired from Russia and hit targets in the American and the Canadian East Coast. And so the fact that we're only now talking about it, once again, underlines the way that the government thinks it's discretionary, and it's not. And so that's the problem.
When they talk about this funding, you know, it's investing in the military, but it's also investing in the defense industry, which is something they haven't done in a really long time. They want to get the equipment and the infrastructure built, and they want to do it in Canada. But are Canadian companies ready to do it?
Absolutely. Just give them the trust that they're not going to be turned around or neglected. I mean, the big problem, the lesson that we should have learned from World War II is we need to have that industry to take care when we take losses, when we lose capabilities, when ships are destroyed and weapons are lost. You need to rebuild them and rebuild them quickly, and that's really what we should be talking about. And I fear that the conversation now is just going, well, what province is going to get the most money out of these industrial benefits? And that's the wrong discussion. It's how do we get that industry so that we can, in fact, keep and maintain a Army, Navy, and Air Force the way we did in the First and the Second World War.
Okay, Rob, thank you for that. Let's just return to the service for just a moment.
And to do good to those who hate us. And now, may you show courage in all your fights. Be blessed in all your life, and in the end, rest safe in the arms of the angels. Amen.
This concludes our Remembrance Day service. Thank you for joining us on this special day on November 11th month of 11th hour at the Hangar Flight Museum. I'd like to give thanks to the speakers, performers, and special guests for coming to our Remembrance Day service. Special thanks to our wonderful friends and neighbors, Eagle Copters and Alpine Helicopters, for allowing us to use their space for the service. I'd also like to thank and recognize and give a warm, heartfelt thanks to the staff and volunteers and those who helped with today's service. Special thanks to CTV Calgary, live on location and live streaming with us for the past 5 years. The museum will continue to be open to the public until 4 p.m. Please enjoy Calgary's rich aviation history. Again, thank you for coming today, lest we forget. I ask everyone now, please stand for God Save the King.
God save our gracious King, long live our noble King. God save the King. Send him victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save the King.
Thank you, everyone.
Rob, we've got a couple of minutes left. I just want to ask you again, we were talking really about the situation Canada finds itself in right now. We're facing a more complex and dangerous security landscape these days. Our enemies are not even as clear as they used to be.
Absolutely. I mean, we've been seeing the problem coming with the Russian use of force in terms of all of its neighbors. We see China, what we think is preparing for an attack on Taiwan. But what really complicates it now for Canada, we've always assumed we could trust our American ally. I mean, we were fighting with the Americans in the First and Second World War. We thought that we had a bedrock of cooperation, but then so much has been upended by statements and actions by what Trump has done. And that further complicates the whole strategic picture that Canada now finds itself in.
Why is it so important to focus on our Navy right now?
Well, part of the reality is that if we are going to keep our enemies from being able to come and attack the North American continent, we need to be able to meet their navies before they can get what's called the approaches. And that's why the Navy plays such a critical role in all of this.
We're watching two major conflicts take place in the world right now, of course, in Ukraine and then in Israel and Gaza. Canadian forces are helping train in Ukraine, but what would have to happen for Canada to potentially be drawn in even further?
Well, the big danger is that we're seeing the Russians already starting to make forms of what's called hybrid warfare against the neighboring states, Poland, the Baltic states, and along that region. If Russia makes the miscalculation of attacking one of the NATO allies, we are under the alliance that we agreed, and in fact played a major role in forming, would be required to join in the defense of those countries. That's why we have forces over in the Baltics right now as it is.
The Canadian government itself is saying that, you know, we need a stronger military in an increasingly dangerous and divided world. We must be needing the cyber defenses that we couldn't even have imagined 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Cyber, you talk about the drones, you talk about the type of radar systems, you talk about a whole host. We've seen a complete revolution in nuclear capabilities, and we haven't even started that conversation yet.
Rob, thank you for joining us today. We always appreciate having you here. Thank you to our viewers for joining us from our live coverage from the Hangar Flight Museum. The museum, as mentioned, is open until 4 o'clock today, and they are accepting donations for the Veterans Association Food Bank. We will have much more Remembrance Day coverage on our news tonight at 5 and 6 o'clock on CTV Calgary and on our website at ctvnews.ca/Calgary. Have a great afternoon.